Canvas Sands is absolutely Sahara deserted. That's absolutely nuts, isn't it? Look at that. Someone's got some work cut out in the next couple of days to get rid of all that sand. Anyway, some of the photos I've got. Rx10 Mark IV is currently in the boot, turned on with the battery taken out because it's absolutely caked in sand, and I don't want to put the barrel back in while turning it off, so I'll blow that out shortly, and then it should be fine. But some of the slow motion video I've got is pretty cool. A whole tree on the beach, which was pretty mental. Pretty mad. But yeah, let's go and warm up and go and have a look at the shots.
So this is how ridiculously windy it was, and I did a little bit of slow motion a video here. As you can see, the wind was just constant pressure. It was just very, very sort of moderating very slightly, but you're looking at 50 to 60 miles an hour. Met a lovely couple that were visiting, and they had two little dogs here, both black labs. One was Maya, I think her name was, and Molly, and they were visiting from where they live from. So obviously nice little wander on the beach there with the dogs, and they were loving the sand. The smaller dog, which I think was May, I might be wrong, was 18 months old, or maybe slightly younger. So obviously still a puppy. Absolutely loving the beach. And Canberra Sands is a stunning place. But as you can see, it's normally just sand. As you can see, there's quite a few pebbles that have been washed up onto the beach. But the light was terrible. It was really dull. The wind was extremely strong, let's say 50 to 60 miles an hour. And it was just awful, really. And that's the couple there, Martin and Nadine, whose dogs they were. Unfortunately, I forget where they visited from, but they were from not England, overseas. And that's the two dogs there with the ears up, because the wind was so powerful that we couldn't get the ears to stay down, unfortunately. But still, they were well behaved, and I think they had a really nice time, which was awesome. The Rx10 Mark IV, absolutely performing brilliantly as always, and the real benefit of having that f2.4 to f4 lens, because you can make the most of the available light. Even if it is a dull day, you can still shoot at relatively high shutter speeds, even at lower ISOs, which is obviously quite important for a smaller sensor. So that worked really, really quite well, especially for moving subjects, and the darker coloured fur or hair of the dogs there to obviously bring the exposure correct. This was a whole tree that had washed up. Further down the coast, there's a place called Fairlight. I'm guessing it fell off the cliff up there, because that cliff edge is quite sort of treacherous nowadays. It's I think it's sandstone, so it washes into the sea quite easily. So it could have been Pett or Fairlight area that it may have fallen in, because the tree was in still relatively sort of okay condition. It wasn't like it was rotten or anything. But as you can see, that's pretty much a whole tree. It was about 30 feet long or thereabouts. But a bit of a random sight, but added to the shot there quite nicely. So that worked quite well. And then it was so ridiculously windy, I could hardly stand up and try and hold the camera still, that I sort of just thought, do you know what, I'll take a few more shots and then I will go up the coast and you'll see what happens in a minute. But just before I got back into the car, you can see there's a little bit of slow motion. You can see the dry sand just cruising across the top of the surface there. It's like someone is grip blasting you. It absolutely hurts like hell. It's so painful. And in fact, the next day, I saw a couple of people and they thought I'd got a suntan, because obviously it had been hitting me so hard that obviously my skin had sort of brightened up a bit. So, but as you can see here, it's shooting at 250 frames a second. You can see the sand cruising. It's like mini dunes on the desert. But the sand was just everywhere, absolutely everywhere. My coat was covered. The Rx10 was absolutely caked. So much so that I actually left it on. I extended the barrel to 600 millimeters and actually pulled the battery out so it could dry with the sand on it, and then I could brush it off and blow it off. without it pulling the sand inside the camera. Absolutely bonkers. I know people are going to go, I can't believe you've done this, but at the end of the day, it's a tool. And if it breaks, it breaks, or if it, I can set it for repair or whatever. So anyway, here's 250 frames a second slow motion of the top of that little sort of mini dune there that was up against the building. And then we're on to the 500 frames per second. Just thought I'd do a little slow motion test, and this is awful light. This is not a sunny day. This is terrible. And at this moment in time, I'm shooting through my car side window as well. So we're shooting through glass from about 20 feet or so. And the difference is, obviously I was sheltered, but it was just allowing me to keep the camera steady. But as you can see here, it's just blown off the top of that edge there, just like you would see in the Sahara Desert, on a big sandstorm, just in a smaller scale. But it was really interesting to see how it was, the pressure was changing, and it was just suddenly speed up and slow down, and suddenly loads more sand would come flying off. And this is at 1,000 frames per second. You can see the grains even more clearly. Unfortunately, obviously, the quality, the higher the frame rate you go, the quality drops. But as you can see there, it's starting to pull away that top edge of the dune as such a little bit more. The pressure's higher there, but still interesting to see, and it's quite cool to have a little mess around with it and everything. So after this, I basically jumped back in the car, obviously, and I drove up the coast about to the other end of Canberra Sands, so probably about 1.5 miles up the road, where the kite surfers were. So as you'll see. This is absolutely awesome, but I was literally struggling to stand still. It was absolutely bonkers. These guys are absolutely nutters. They go out in this in even worse conditions than this, and just to see them doing this sort of stuff is absolutely awesome. And some of the guys are absolutely amazing. They can hold the kite up there and do all these ridiculous things, but they're travelling at God knows what speed. So it looks really, really awesome. So as you can see there in the two clips beforehand, the difference between the stabilization turned off and on, I literally could hardly stand still. So that shows you, even with the Rx10 Mark IV, which is a small camera compared to, say, something like a 150 to 600 millimeter on the A7R3 or something like that, there's no way you could hold a big lens still, especially because they've got larger lens hoods and things like that. So they're going to get buffeted like you wouldn't believe. The other issue is, which you can see in this clip and this clip, is the amount of spray in the air. I was constantly cleaning the front elements. In fact, at one point I ended up taking the skylight filter off because I couldn't clean it anymore, and I'd run out of the dry cloth. So it was a case of just take this, and then I just had to sort of go back to the car and find another cloth to actually dry that one. But it was still auto-focusing through the mist, the misty sort of spray on the front of the lens, which I was still rather impressed about. And no real slowdown on how it was actually, it wasn't hunting at all. Eventually it got so bad it couldn't do it, which I kind of understand. It was almost blind, but still getting some awesome shots. And even this one here, you can see it's quite sort of milky, sort of misty looking. And it was just a case of just persevere, really. And I'm like 150 meters offshore, away from them. and the spray coming in was so crazy. I mean, as you can see there, the waves are crashing right out on the horizon. I don't know how far out that actually is, but normally a wave is crashing 10 meters or 20 meters back into the sea, not 400 or 500 or even more. As you can see here, another really misty sort of. It wouldn't hardly focus through the sort of spray. It's in focus, but obviously it's giving it a softer appearance. It's a bit like putting Vaseline or something on there around your lens to give it a softer appearance. Same as this one here, but it's still sharp. When you actually zoom in on it, it's still actually in focus. Just the lens was actually just covered in mist and salty sort of water. So what can you do in those conditions? It's very, very difficult. And it's onshore wind, so it was coming from the sea inland as well. It's a constant battle of one, trying to stand still, two, trying to keep this the water off the end of the lens. The camera itself covered in sand, covered in salt water, but when I went back to the car, I always have like an alcoholic wipe kit in the car where I just wipe the camera down. But then I went to my parents' house, which I then gave it another clean with some more wipes. And obviously when I was actually in the car, actually taking the battery out with it at 600 millimeters, so there's no sand or anything can be pulled into the actual camera via the seals inside the zoom lens part. As you can see though, even though the light was dull, there was no sun out at all. It was literally just it was just dull. But having f4, I was still shooting at 1,000th of a second at ISO 100. So it gave me those options. But where I had the 150 to 600 f6.3, you would have to turn your ISO up to sort of ISO 640 or even ISO 1000 to get the shutter speed you wanted. So a big difference in that area, especially for the Rx10 Mark IV, which obviously works best at ISO 100. But really cool day out, even though I got completely and utterly blasted by the sand, the water and everything, and obviously the camera did as well. But it just shows you what you can do. I don't mind pushing my equipment to its limits. It can make a huge difference in the difference of the shots being good or bad, or getting the shot that no one else has got. That's the major differences in photography. If you don't risk that extra little bit just to get the photo, obviously watching your own safety and stuff like that is obviously, standing right at the edge of a cliff or hanging off a cliff on a bit of rope or something, is not really ideal. But in conditions like this where the camera's getting battered to hell, or I'm getting battered to hell, I'm just glad it wasn't raining, because if it was raining it would have been a different situation. I still would have been out there, but I would have needed to try and hide behind something to try and just keep the rain off the actual the end of the lens as well, because the amount of water and spray in the air anyway was obviously quite a lot, and obviously that makes a big difference anyway. But quite pleased with the photos. Obviously some sunshine would have been nice, because that way your subjects and everything are lit, and it pulls them away from the background just that much more, which makes obviously a big difference in the long run. But all in all, nice and clean. Even though sometimes the lens was covered in obviously spray, it was still, like I say, it was still autofocusing quite happily, to a point where obviously it got so bad that even if I'd cleaned it, I was just making a smeary mess on the end of the lens. So obviously I went back to the car a couple of times, where one, it was sheltered, and two, I had another couple of spare cloths to get the lens clean again, so I could carry on using it. Met a really nice guy, Wayne, down there, plus the kite surfing guys had a quick chat too, so hi there. So that was really nice. So it was always nice to meet new people while you're out and about. So many other photographers just walk past each other and don't actually say hello. I always try and say hello. Some people just ignore you, which is obviously plain rude, but it's up to them at the end of the day. But some people, obviously, it's nice to meet people, and then you compare equipment. You're not you know, I don't care what people use. It's not a case of, oh, I'm Canon, I'm Nikon, I'm Sony, I'm Pentax, whatever. Whatever you choose to use is down to you, and if you get the best out of it, that's brilliant. So after getting blown to bits and you know, saying goodbye to everyone that I'd met and everything, I went to my parents, and then sunset was about 6 o'clock. So about 5:30, left there and drove down to Pett Level, which is Winchelsea Beach, Pett Level area. As you can see, the sun was going on. I just missed it because it was slow traffic, which sucked. But this is what I'm talking about, like sheer luck and being in the right place, right time. The sun had gone down behind those the hill there, but just as I aimed the camera up in the air, a buzzard literally came into view. Just came up from where the trees are there, silhouettes of the trees, into view. Camera locked onto it straight away, and managed to get that shot. So really quite pleased on that. It was just random luck. Moon was up. This is what happens. So the weather had been terrible all day. Obviously high winds and everything. Still a little bit windy, but basically the sky cleared. We had an interesting sunset. Obviously the moon was up. That's Paul McCartney's recording studio, one of them, which is an old windmill. But the way the cloud and everything behind was kind of cool. So that worked quite nicely. And then looking back to where I was earlier, sort of Canberra Sands area, you got the wind turbines, and because you had such moody sky behind, they were sticking out, you know, quite nicely. And obviously the waves crashing in and everything there looked quite nice as well. And then this is just a wide angle shot, so you can see the sea wall to the left and the road, and then the beach is built up. Because on the left hand side, this used to be sea a long time ago, and it's obviously been man-made. But that's it, guys. So as you can see here, just the last bit, just having a quick look over and around this sort of the sea view as such, which is really nice. But yeah, I hope that was quite an insight. And obviously the camera is fine. I just gave it a good clean, brushed it all off with a soft make-up brush to give any extra sand anywhere, and it's been working fine since. So please subscribe, please click the notification bell, and I shall see you soon.